Hey everyone, so I wanted to analyze what I think every rank can take from this VCT tournament. This video is focused on what I think iron, bronze, and silver level players can take away from this game in terms of game sense and gameplay. So let's dive into the first takeaway. Okay, so this first clip, I want you to take notice of how Calm, who is the Cypher on Leviatan, uses his trips.
Two world champs. You've got Calm and Aspas on your team. You got King, who was the brightest spot on Leviatan last year.
Yeah, my brother.
Here. Tex comes through Ascension. He's the real deal. He continues to improve. He continues to impress.
And now I want you to notice how he plays his Cypher on A.
There is a decent buy from Lev, so they will be able to fight fire with fire here.
Just goes here.
And someone who I've been praising quite a bit on this Lev team has been Calm, specifically.
All right, so something that I want you all to catch there as Calm goes through his game, and you can watch the full game and kind of see how he did this throughout the game, but just two quick examples. So he played first on B, and then on the next round that I showed you, he played over on A. That's something that's pretty vital to anchor characters, specifically Cypher and KJ, and Chamber to some degree. This idea that you're not just putting the default trips wherever they go and then kind of relying on these time and time again, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, as a defensive Cypher or defensive KJ, if you keep putting these, or even if you don't keep putting these, but you kind of stagger these on site, they're gonna eventually learn that you're playing here every round, and they're gonna stop pushing this direction, right? So you do have this control, right? Like you've now officially, after a few rounds of having these trips in the same area or moving them around in the same area, you do have control of this area now from round to round. But all that's going to do, and I'm sure you've seen it a bunch of times, all that's going to do is get people to say, all right, let's push out a mid, right? Like, how can we push out a mid and maybe push into market and take control of market now? Or instead of that, it's going to get people to kind of push into A instead. And now your team is stuck with the unfortunate task of having to deal with the push. So I think something to kind of keep in mind is that not only do you have to stagger your utility on one site in particular, so you definitely want to make sure that you're kind of keeping this fresh, right? So something you'll see him do in his lineups, or in his case, is sometimes he'll play for early intel, right? So he'll put a trip here or something, for example, and then another trip over here for earlier intel that they're getting onto site. And then sometimes instead of that trip, he'll come back here maybe, and he'll put one back here, and he'll put another one somewhere like, you know, back here. And this is for more late intel, right? And what that does is it changes up the way that you play the game. So what he's doing here is, for example, these trips would stop them from pushing you so that you can retake more confidently, right? Whereas these trips over here are stopping them from pushing on site so that you can keep this control. None of this stuff, like the idea of like retaking more confidently or keeping the control of this space, I'm not expecting any of that stuff to really like affect or impact the general iron or bronze or silver lobbies, right? Like there's not enough coordination in those lobbies for you to be able to kind of take advantage of that idea. But the main goal is not just changing your utility here, but changing where you are, right? You can go onto A one round, you can come up to mid and A link another round. Keep them guessing. That's your goal, is you don't want them to always know Cypher plays B, we're not going to go there, we're going to go mid, or we're going to go A instead. Okay, the second thing that I want to talk about is that when you're trying to defuse a spike, you have to create some semblance of pressure for the enemy here, which in this case is the attacker, to peek you. So I'm going to play this clip here. Just focus on the way that Calm, which is the fade here, tries to draw the Cypher out of tree by tapping and holding.
Calm, with the round in his hand, has an eye to play with. Remember, Yetuje's a little bit weak too. He's taking some damage. But his positioning here is everything. The eye cleared. He knows where he is. The cam spotted him. And that's one that's been found. He has to tuck. Buys a little bit of time, pulls it out. Now Yetuje just playing around the corner. He's not going to swing. He's not going to give him the challenge. Finally comes out, and Yetuje
All right, so here's a clip of what not to do in this situation. Granted, there was a pretty big time crunch, but just focus on the Gecko and how he plays with the spike in relation to the Omen here on attack.
Tex and King have both upgraded weapons. Send Wingman to try to do it on his own. Tex would have to 1v3.
It's half.
He can't take the fight. Oh, he's on a tap. He's tagged him down. 70 HP, daring him to swing, beckoning him to challenge. But the spike will go off. Tex gets the kills, but the round goes the way of FUT.
Okay, so let's talk about this concept of creating pressure with tapping the spike. We saw two clips there, right? We saw Calm on Lotus with one of the players in tree and one of them on the spike. Calm tapped the spike, moved over without making noise, and waited for the person to peek out a tree. And then we saw here on Sunset, we saw the Gecko tap the spike, take a shot, move over, and wait for somebody to peek. This is a super basic difference between the two. One of them, you hear a noise after the tap. The other one, you hear no noise after the tap. I just want to put yourself in the defender's shoes. Well, really the attacker's shoes. They're defending the spike, but they're the attackers in this situation. You've got bomb down, right? So you planted your bomb right there. You hear the tap of the spike. You hear one shot. What incentive do I have as this person playing this corner to peek this now? You know he's not on it. He shot right after he tapped. And what the Gecko should have done that I want you all to try to take away from this is if you tap and you shoot, your pressure is gone. You have to tap again. There's no world in which tapping, shooting, and then coming over here and sitting here is going to do anything for you. And I don't want to be too harsh on the Gecko, the pro player there, but genuinely speaking, like, the only scenario that works if you do this, you tap the spike, you shoot, and then you go silent, is if you have like 40 seconds left to defuse the spike and you're trying to push up slowly. And even then, this person here is probably going to expect you to come up because you haven't tapped again. So I'm trying to be very intentional about the fact that, like, this has nothing to do with the idea of not making noise after you tap. You can make as much noise as you want after you tap the spike and do this and run around, whatever the hell you want. None of that matters. What I'm trying to illustrate here is the idea that after you make that noise, so after you shoot or after, like, let's say you tap the spike, they peek and you miss a shot. Okay, you can't just sit here now. You can't wait because, again, no incentive for them to peek you. You have to tap the spike again and then you have to shoot when they peek. It's a pressure creating ability that you have now to draw the attacker back out of their little holes, is this concept of tapping the spike. So please try and keep that in mind as you're playing these 1v1 or 1v2 retakes and you're trying to defuse the spike, that making noise after you tap is very unbeneficial to you in these situations. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, think about subscribing, and if not, then I'm not sure why you're still here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.